Party in T-style. The silence that had fallen was more frightening than the recent screams. Constantine, trying not to breathe, pressed himself into a barely visible niche in the wall and prayed that he wouldn't be noticed. He didn't know how much time remained until the gong, but he hoped it would be soon. In his right hand he clutched a trophy screwdriver, his only weapon. Ridiculous and pitiful. The sound of footsteps rang out. Someone was walking down the corridor confidently, without fear. Constantine gripped the screwdriver tighter and tensed his legs. If they spotted him, he wouldn't surrender without a fight. A lunge. Someone grabbed him by the shirt, lifting him like a doll. Constantine struck out to the side. The screwdriver hit something hard and slipped from his sweaty palm. The pursuer, a tall man in a grey suit and hyena mask, grabbed him by the throat. Constantine wheezed, clawing at the mask, trying to reach the eyes. The mask shifted and fell to the floor. Beneath the mask was a smooth, inhuman head. No ears, no eyes, no mouth. A polished surface in which the suffocating young man saw his own face. And then the reflection began to change. He no longer knew if it was the effect of suffocation, or if the image had actually changed. But he remembered. The train. A compartment. Two of them. Constantine returning from a business trip, and a silent fellow traveler, a pleasant middle-aged man. At that time Constantine was going through a difficult divorce, with a gaping hole where his soul should be. As often happens, his tongue loosened over cognac on the train. He pulled out everything dark that had been gathering dust in the basements of his soul. The fellow traveler didn't interrupt, didn't offer false sympathy, just listened and looked at him with a strange, piercing gaze. "Everything will work out," the fellow traveler said, getting up. "Perhaps not for you, but it will work out. And for the future, if you have one. I advise you to be more careful about exposing your soul to strangers. Sometimes it's more dangerous than bearing your rear end at the Blue Oyster Bar." The meaning of the phrase didn't immediately penetrate Constantine's mind, clouded by alcohol and memories. When it did, he just cursed and collapsed into sleep, throwing the episode out of his head. Constantine stopped struggling and went limp. The killer threw aside his body and, picking up the mask, put it on again. The hunt continued. "Well, and why are we going there?" came from the room. Gerald rolled his eyes. The same question again. When he received an invitation to the Mercury Club for the closed mastery party, his happiness knew no bounds. He had long dreamed of something like this. Gene worked at an insurance company and honestly hated his job, the clients, colleagues, management. He drew quite well and loved it, but didn't believe he could make money from art. But he wanted to eat every day. He tried keeping a blog, but didn't achieve much popularity. However, he knew if everything went well at the party at Mercury, he would be noticed. Then his paintings would start selling, and his blog would take off. But there was one problem. He needed to come with a companion. Better yet, with a family. Wife, child. That was the organizer's condition. "Well, sunshine," he began, "we talked about this. They're not expecting me alone there. And I really want to get in. This is my chance to change my hateful job." The girl didn't answer, and from her face, you couldn't tell what she was thinking. He looked at her. Tall, slender, with regular features. She wore ripped jeans, t-shirts with cats, sneakers, hair in a ponytail, almost no makeup. She loved motorcycles, but felt confident behind the wheel of a car too. Never at a loss for words, but didn't talk about herself. And her younger sister, 12-year-old Lara, a hell-raising girl who looked like a cat, was no less reckless, and they had met in a rather unusual way. Gene found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time, said the wrong thing to say in certain circles. As a result, 3 tough guys dragged him out onto the street and began to graphically explain that anyone can offend an artist. Passersby, as usual, passed by. When a grey Renault stopped nearby, No one paid attention. 3 against 1. A child's voice sounded. The tough guys froze, turned to look at the thin girl. From the driver's door emerged a young woman, calm and confident. "How about 3 against 3? Asked the small one. One of the guys smirked and said to the older one, "Get lost while you're still in one piece. We'll take him and leave," the other replied. Silence hung in the alley. "You little," one began. But his friend, who had been studying the older girl intently, as if recognizing her, suddenly said, "If he's with you, let him go." He helped Jean get up and pushed him toward the girls. He vaguely remembered getting into the car and passing out. He woke up on a bed in the apartment where the sisters lived. There was a concussion, several bruises, but no fractures. That's how he met Nessa and Lara. Nessa got him back on his feet, and then somehow, imperceptibly, he found himself in bed with her. About what happened in the alley, Jean preferred not to ask, afraid he would hear an answer he wouldn't like. Strange relationships developed between them. They simultaneously attracted and frightened Jean. He felt gratitude, attraction, passion. He was drawn to Nessa, but couldn't understand who he had gotten involved with. To start with, he didn't even know the sisters' real names. The older one introduced herself as Nessa. When he was surprised, she said it was a nickname. Her real name was for closer acquaintance. What she did for work, where Lara went to school, who this mysterious uncle was, he never found out. Several times, he was about to leave. He couldn't. And yesterday, he found an invitation in his mailbox. His chance. All that remained was to convince the sisters, and here he wasn't sure. It seemed that both Nessa and Lara always did only what they wanted. "I heard something about Mercury," Nessa said after a pause. "I don't remember exactly." "What do you think, Shy?" she asked. "It says here it's a masquerade party. I think you can wear your favorite mask and show off my manicure." The girl responded joyfully. "Then I'm in." "We agree," Nessa answered. "But if they beat you up there because of our behavior, don't complain." "I won't." He beamed. "I thought it would be somewhere downtown," said Lara, turning her head. "We go there," Jean pointed to the bus. "They'll take us. Downtown is the elite club, but such parties are held at country villas." Inside, the bus was more like a limousine. Several comfortable armchairs, refrigerators with drinks, quiet music. The silent driver indicated their seats, and Jean settled in with pleasure, closing his eyes. It seemed life was getting better. Nessa whispered something to her sister, who nodded, took some juice without asking, and sprawled in the armchair. Besides them, there were 2 couples and a family of 3 in the bus, apparently mum, dad, and a boy Lara's age. They drove for about an hour. When the doors opened, it turned out the bus had driven into a garage. Getting out, they immediately found themselves in a spacious, enclosed space. "Please follow me." They were met by a tall man in a gray suit and fox mask. They followed him and soon found themselves in a huge hall. There were already about 30 people there. Guests wandered between tables, chatted, enjoyed drinks and snacks. "The main program," the guide announced, "will begin in an hour. Enjoy yourselves for now." "Tasty," said Lara with her mouth full, "but boring." "When is the main part?" "What's your name?" the boy they had ridden with unexpectedly asked. He had kept his distance for some time, but now decided to approach. Despite the party being family-friendly, there were few children besides them, only 2 older girls who demonstratively ignored the little ones. "Shay Lara, but you can call me Lara." "And you?" she answered. "Cool name." "I'm Igor," he said, and wanted to add something, but then came the sound of a gong, loud and ominous. The room plunged into darkness. Then spotlights flashed, illuminating an improvised stage. In the middle stood a person in a jackal mask, surrounded by 5 in white bear masks. "I'm pleased to announce the beginning of the main part of the monthly game Survive Until Dawn. The voice, amplified by microphone, resounded through the hall. Dead silence fell. As you probably guessed, the essence of the game is to survive until dawn. More precisely, until 6 in the morning. Phones don't work. Don't waste time. There can be any number of winners. The reward is generous. New personnel appeared in the hall. Tall guys in black uniforms and dog masks. No identification marks, no names, only a strange symbol on the left shoulder. 2 white ellipses connected in an infinity sign. The dogs, the host continued, will maintain order and ensure you don't want to stay here after the second gong. And the hunters can be seen if you look up. On the second floor stood men in suits and hyena masks. The dogs moved synchronously into the hall, separating people into groups. They carried clubs, but the threat emanating from them was so strong that they almost didn't need to use force. Only once. When Igor's mother rushed to her son, one of the men roughly pushed her back. Terror gripped Jean. He stood like a post, not believing what was happening. He found Nessa and Lara with his eyes at the very moment when the dogs approached them. Lara continued chewing her sandwich. There wasn't a drop of fear on her face, as if she didn't understand what was happening. They were separated, like everyone else. Nessa shouted something to her sister, who nodded. There are no rules, the host said. You can hide, you can fight. There will be no bonuses for killing hunters, except perhaps moral satisfaction. The spotlights illuminated 3 tall passages in the far wall. This is the entrance to the game zone. Boys to the left, girls to the right, children in the center. The second gong sounded. You have 2 minutes to leave the hall. Whoever stays will become prey to the dogs and won't survive until dawn. After a short pause, everyone rushed to their exits. Only Igor's mother remained, standing without taking her eyes off her son, and Nessa, who unhurriedly headed toward the archway. Stay behind me, Lara told the frightened children. Everything will be fine. Jean hesitated. He found himself among the last. Before leaving, he looked back and saw how Nessa literally dragged the screaming woman and pushed her into the archway. And then he left the hall and no longer saw how Nessa unexpectedly threw herself at the nearest dog. Her attack was swift. The trained fighter didn't have time to react. A blow to the throat. The club snatched from his hands. A turn on her heel. A blow to another dog's knee. A jump or jerk, and the enemy falls. Nessa disappears into the exit archway. Finding herself in the corridor, Lara looked around. The others huddled fearfully behind her, silently recognizing her as leader. Near the entrance stood a table with masks. Nearby, a man in a hyena mask. Adults fight. Children run, he said. If you choose a mask and find shelter under it, you might survive until morning. Choose. I already have one, Lara answered, raising her head and showing a cat face instead of a human one. Like in anime about cat girls. Wait a minute. The man stepped toward her. Where did you get? He didn't finish. Lara lunged forward. Instead of fingernails, sharp claws. She slipped under his arm, found herself behind his back, pushed off from the floor, jumped onto his shoulders. The man tried to grab her, but didn't succeed. The claws pierced his neck, in the gap between mask and collar, and ripped upward, leaving for grooves on the mask. The man wheezed, dropped to one knee, then fell. Lara tore off the mask, exposing a round, crack-covered sphere. What is that? Squeaked one of the girls. Filth, Lara answered. Follow me. Jean sat quietly, trying to merge with the wall. After entering the game zone, he rushed deep into the corridor, found a room filled with old furniture, and squeezed into the gap between the sofa and wall. He understood the shelter was unreliable, but fear of going out and encountering hunters paralyzed his will. A couple of times he heard screams. Each one felt like a blow to his nerves. And then a creak. His hair stood on end. He froze, not breathing. It didn't help. A tall figure bent over him, grabbed him by the shirt and pulled him from his unreliable shelter. Strong hands closed around his throat. Gene wheezed and clawed at the hunter's fingers. The hunter looked at him with an indifferent hyena mask, and suddenly the mask slipped from his face. Beneath it was a transparent round sphere, and the artist nearly lost consciousness from horror. Inside the sphere mist swirled, and suddenly Gene saw a bar. This was several years ago. Then he had come to get drunk. His soul felt wretched. No one needed his paintings, his blog wasn't popular, and a week ago his girlfriend had left him. At first he drank alone, then struck up a conversation with his neighbor at the bar. The man unexpectedly didn't brush him off, listened attentively, didn't interrupt, occasionally refilling his empty glass. And Gene spilled everything. He exposed the most secret corners of his soul, pouring out accumulated irritation and disappointment. Now he saw himself there again. Saw that guy, his cold, piercing gaze. He was drawing him into the abyss, and Gene had no strength to resist. And suddenly, everything ended. The sphere replacing the killer's head shattered into pieces, and Gene fell, convulsively inhaling the much-desired air. "Get up, there's little time," he heard, and stared in amazement at Nessa, extending her left hand. In her right she clutched the club with which she had apparently cracked the hyena's skull. He got up, and she, grabbing his hand, literally dragged him along. "Nessa, what is this?" he mumbled. "This is a gateway," she answered, "between Earth and a very unpleasant place. It's open, and we're going to close it." "We?" he asked. "Yeah. Me, Shy, and you," she answered. "We've been looking for this place for a long time, but getting here isn't easy. You need to be invited. And they don't invite everyone. You need to be not only a weak person who's easy to erase, but also give permission to invite yourself." "Permission? I didn't." "You did," she cut him off. "You looked for 3 years, complained, shared intimate things, exposed your soul. Usually it's not scary, but sometimes you do it in the wrong place and allow yourself to be taken." They walked down the corridor, and Gene saw scattered bodies. Guests and hunters lay right on the floor. He recognized the father of the boy they had ridden with in the bus. In a couple of minutes they emerged into a huge amphitheater. Gene wasn't surprised to see Lara, next to whom stood the other children. Besides them, there were several men and women here, far fewer than the guests at the party. "Shy, did you find the entrance?" Nessa asked. She nodded, pointing with her hand to one of the passages. "Shy goes first, then the guys, children in the middle. Gene and I bring up the rear." No one objected. Everyone was too overwhelmed and ready to follow whoever knew the way. In a minute the stone corridor was replaced by metal. Metal clanged hollowly underfoot. Strange writings appeared on the walls. Gene, as an artist, noted their beauty and the skill with which they were drawn. But something in these signs was troubling. He couldn't understand what exactly, but felt they weren't for beauty. "Where are we going?" he dared to ask. "To the heart of this place," Nessa answered. "It's time to stop it, but," he mumbled, "there's probably security there. And we, without weapons." He wanted to stop, but Nessa squeezed his hand a little harder. He nearly cried out and ran faster. "There won't be security there," she said. "This isn't a military facility with drones and traps. This is a transition area. Different laws operate here, and until morning no one but hunters will be here. And there are no more hunters. Right, Shy?" The light became brighter, the air colder. The silence was replaced by steady vibration. The corridor ended with stairs going down, disappearing into darkness. Light didn't penetrate below the 3rd step. "Shy and Gene and I go further. The rest wait here," Nessa ordered. Gene would have preferred to stay, but understood his opinion didn't matter to anyone. They began the descent. He closed his eyes and started counting steps. "We're here. You can open your eyes," he heard. In the center of the room was a sphere, similar to the one that had replaced the hunter's head, but 10 times larger. Inside, shadows danced, fragmented and merged again. "And how do we destroy it?" he asked. "With a voluntary sacrifice," Nessa answered. Shy opened the tunnel. The girl nodded, extended her claws, and deftly opened a vein. Jin watched with jaw agape as thick black liquid, like bitumen, flowed from the cut. She approached the sphere. Dark drops began dripping onto its smooth surface. Where they touched, black spots appeared, expanded and merged into one large blot. "And now the sacrifice," Nessa said, taking out a knife and grabbing Jean by the shoulder. "What? Me?" he weakly mumbled. "Unfortunately, yes," she shrugged. "Ready to suffer for the cause." He didn't have time to object. She thrust his face into the sphere, and he fell into emptiness. No top, no bottom. He floated in weightlessness, and vile thoughts spun in his head. 30 years old, no money, no family, hateful work, failures, disappointments. The thoughts materialized, enveloped him, penetrated his mouth, nose, ears, suffocated him. "Why do you exist? Why?" Came from everywhere. "You have nothing. You yourself don't exist. No, no." He seemed to dissolve in the emptiness, becoming thinner and lighter. But then, he remembered. His first drawing. Bright, successful. His mother's smile. The frame on the wall. When had he lost himself? And why? Why had he given up his dream for a penny ante job? Fury replaced apathy. He jerked, pulled himself together, lunged with his entire being. The blackness disappeared, and he saw. He was standing in the room again, and the sphere before him was covering with cracks and falling apart. "Well done." Nessa's voice sounded different, with respect in it. She put a flask in his hand, and he took several greedy swallows. The cognac burned his throat, but he felt better. "What was that?" he asked. "You closed the passage," Lara answered. "Only a person from Earth could do that. That's why we had to drag you along." "But you managed," Nessa added. "Let's go. There's nothing more to do here." The way out was erased from memory. He remembered how they joined up with the rest of the group, walked upstairs and through corridors. And then, fresh air dawn. They stood in a parking lot in front of the building where the party had taken place. It looked abandoned. Not a single window showed light. The survivors stuck together. Lara was saying something to the crying Igor. All of this was imprinted in his memory in ragged fragments. "Well, time to say goodbye," Nessa said. "They'll pick you up soon. Here's compensation. You did survive until dawn after all." She shoved an envelope into his hand. "I think you should quit and do what you really want. Now everything will work out for you." "Thank you," he said, and unexpectedly added, "Will we meet again?" Hey friends, we've reached the end of this incredible journey together. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Book Beats. We're constantly uploading new audiobooks across all genres. So hit that subscribe button and you'll never miss your next great listen. Thanks again for being part of the Book Beats family. Until next time, happy listening, friends.